All right, everybody, we're going to go and get started. I want to welcome you here to our services tonight at Woodlawn. Hope you've had a good day today. Just a few matters of housekeeping of our announcements before we get going with our services tonight. A few quick announcements, updates to our sick. I want to thank a bunch of you today have said something to John and I about our aunt. We did have an aunt pass away, our Aunt Janie. That funeral was today. It was at Tuscumbia today, and we appreciate the prayers for the family for that. That was our dad's oldest sister, so just continue to pray for the Simpson family. Also, we've got a thank you note here from, I didn't read it, I didn't proof it, Dee Dee, so I hope there's no big words in it. Dee Dee says, thank you for all the calls, texts, visits, and especially the prayers during my recent surgery. It's great to be a part of this group of God's family. In His love, Dee Dee. And we hope that you continue. We hope that it helps you and fixes your issue and things will be better for you. We appreciate you and love you. We do have another one that we want to remember. Rachel Hardy King has a son named Oakley. Now, give me a minute. I'm going to backtrack, and then you'll know who this is, okay? I can't remember their last name, but Marcia and Rodney, and they had a boy that would come with them, Saul. Marcia and Rodney would stay for class. Can't think of the last name. Rodney would come in our class, so we'd have the round glasses and sit in our class, had the little boy named Saul. This would be Marcia's grandbaby. They're members at Foot Street now in Corinth, Mississippi. She has a 2-year-old, and they moved him to Le Bonheur, and he had surgery. Was it yesterday, Heather? Where did you go? The surgery was this morning. Had a brain tumor on a 2-year-old baby. She's a graduate of Mars Hill. Rachel Hardy was her name. Many of you may remember Fletcher Hardy. If you had kids older, Fletcher, it's Fletcher's sister. So just remember that family. They're hoping that they got it all and things will be okay, but you never know, so just remember that family. The child's name is Oakley King, and we'll try to find some more updates on that. And hopefully it'll click with you in a few minutes who that is. Rodney and Saul. They would come in, had just a good little family there. We're still continuing our pantry needs of spaghetti, noodles, and sauce. Just bring those and set them in the back. We'll carry them over here. I want to make sure everyone's aware of the bridal shower for Emma. That's coming up on Sunday the 30th from 3 to 4:30. Her selections are at Target, Amazon, and Dillard's. We also are going to have a children's tea party. That will be coming up on Saturday the 29th. Oh, my goodness. Saturday the 29th from 10 to 12. It's a come and go at Florence Boulevard Church of Christ. Is that right? I think so. I need to bring my glasses. Uh-oh. We also have VBS meeting. We have that in the bulletin for the 16th, but the 16th is this Sunday, and that's Pack-A-Pew. So we're going to bump that over to the 23rd because of Pack-A-Pew. And let me remind you, if you haven't heard, Pack-A-Pew Sunday. That's our biggest Sunday of the year. We are going to have our regular church service at 9 o'clock. Then we'll have our class, and then we'll go over there and eat. And it may be the last meal we have in that activity building the way it is. We're doing some renovation over there, Lord willing, soon. And we'll have a meal. We'll have some chicken and ham that the church is catering. And you bring the vegetables and other things and desserts and drinks. And then we'll come back over here for our afternoon devotional. And for that afternoon devotional, we will be treated to 3 quick lessons from Carson, Brock, from their lad speech, and Jackson Holt, who delivered his message today. Him and Bryce did theirs in chapel today. Is that right? Yeah, I heard you did great. And so we're looking forward to their lad speech. They didn't get to do here on Sunday night because Jackson didn't feel well, and we didn't have time for the others, so we'll do that Sunday afternoon. So looking forward to that. we do have a work day scheduled for Saturday. And when John starts the song leading, he's going to give us an update on that and tell us what all we do have planned for that. So if you can come out for that, we really need your help on a lot of things. And the more we have here, the less time we're all going to be here. There's been times where we have only a few and we're here to 4 or 5 o'clock. There's been times where we got a lot of people here and we're done at 11. And that's the time, that's the kind we want right there, where we got a lot of people here, a lot of people going in a lot of different directions, and we can get things done. I still remember the day we had, it was like 40 or 50 people out here, and Billy Howard was shoving limbs into a shredder. I mean, that was fun. We don't need that kind of work done, but we got a lot of work that we need to have done. So John will update you on that in just a few minutes. So for our services tonight, Greg, will you lead us in our prayer that will dismiss us to our classes? I do have the invitation thought. John's got the song service, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Concerning the work day, we'll start here Saturday morning, Lord willing, about 8:30 in the morning. Give it a little later start than normal. We usually start at 8. We're going to do lunch around 12 o'clock. Justin has agreed to cook hamburgers for everybody that shows up, so we'll get that number and plan accordingly for lunch. But yeah, you need to come. You got to earn your keep. You know, you've got. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm super excited. If you haven't been around the back of the building to see the dirt work, the embankment is almost completed. Tomorrow you should be able to complete that. So Saturday we are going to be spreading some seed, putting some fabric, landscape fabric down, straw fabric, whatever it is, to hopefully get some grass growing there. Shrubs to trim around the place. Andrew will have the grass cut and weed eated, so you don't have to worry about any of that. We will have some pressure washing. A lot of things going on inside the building, moving things around, and moving things, I think, over there, something Matt was saying. So there is a lot of things to do, but, you know, we have a great time on work days. It's a great time to fellowship. I mean, it's a lot of work, I get it, but it seems like we all have a great time when we're working together like that. So if you can, we'd love to have you. Ladies, too, come on out. We got things you can do for us as well. All right, if you got any questions, get up with me, and there's a tool list, little snips. If you got a pressure washer, that's great. Hedge trimmers, water hoses, yeah, because our water, I don't know what's going on out front of the building, if we even have a faucet out there at this point in time with all that going on with the work they're doing there. But we'll stretch a water hose where we need to. All right, let's all sing.
You know, as we celebrated Easter last Sunday and thought about items related to the resurrection, I want to direct your minds just for a minute to John chapter 20 and just some few thoughts from this passage here as we get ready to go to our classes. And some things that occurred today that kind of reminded me of this text. You know, as we were at Tuscumbia today, we were there for the funeral for my Aunt Janie, and John got to lead singing, and Jeff Abrams did a great job at the funeral, and just made it a celebration of her life. My Aunt Janie was a great woman that did a lot of good works for a lot of people, and was really involved there in the work of the church. And at the end of the service, one of her grandsons had pre-recorded, because I guess he didn't think he could handle it live, but pre-recorded singing a song by the band Casting Crowns. Many of you may listen to that band, and I don't really know the title of it. I know I've heard the song a few times, but the song, what? Scars in Heaven. And the song, the gist of the song went like something like this, that when we get to heaven, that we need to be thankful that when we get to heaven, that there will be no scars in heaven, except the scars in the one in the hands that's holding us. And that is a very powerful thought. That the only scars that will be there are the scars in the hands of Jesus. 8 days after the resurrection, the disciples had gathered together. Thomas was with them. That's verse 26 of John chapter 20. The doors were locked. Jesus came and stood among them. He had already been in there once, and Thomas was gone. And then he had disappeared from them. And Thomas comes busting through the door. Don't really know where he had been. Maybe he'd been off on some trip to help out some others. But as he had come through and they had told him what had happened, and I don't know. It doesn't strike me that the disciples were practical jokers, that they'd played a lot of practical jokes on each other. I'm sure that they'd done some, but this is not something that they would typically joke about. But for some reason, there was no way Thomas was going to believe until he had seen the hands himself and put his hands in the holes where the nail print was. The doors were locked, and Jesus came out and stood among them. And he said, "Peace be with you." And you can imagine if you're a fly on that wall, if you're in there, and as Jesus comes into the door and you know that the doors are locked, you turn around and you see him there. And then Jesus says specifically to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. And put out your hand and place it in my side." I guess when I try to read this, I try to put myself in the story, and I just imagine that there's this eye contact between Thomas and Jesus as Jesus, I imagine him taking Thomas's hand and pulling back his cloak and setting it inside his cloak and putting it inside there and saying, there. Don't disbelieve. Believe. And he answered, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." You know what's neat I guess it's really weird that there's a little bit of jealousy there for me, isn't it you? That I want to touch that. I want to do that. I want to be able to feel that. And yet Jesus is saying to him that I'm more blessed here today for believing in it, for not ever seeing it. But I still want to. So all those images in my mind, as that song was playing, was me thinking of that day when I awake in eternity. That he'll take my hands and he'll put them in his side. And he'll say something to me like, better now. You know, I told you. That's why we're here. That's why we're here on a Wednesday night when we could be sitting at home in our recliner with a bowl of ice cream. Just sitting there, enjoying ourselves, taking a nap, even doing a crossword puzzle, occupying ourselves with anything else that we wanted to do. That's why we're here tonight, is because a man lived a perfect life, died on a cross, gave himself for us, was placed in a tomb, walked out, stood among more than 500 people, stood among those who followed him, and said, here I am. You believe me now? Blessed are those who are going to sit in a pew on Sunday and Wednesday in April of 2023 and are planning for their pack-a-pew service on Sunday morning, and they're inviting their friends to come be a part of their worship service where they're going to worship and praise me. Blessed are those because they've never seen it and they still believe me. That's why we're here. So tonight, if you feel compelled to respond to that, if you haven't already, first of all, I don't know how you can't if you haven't already. But if you need to respond to that, to become a Christian, we give you that opportunity. Not only do we give you that opportunity, we plead with you to take advantage of this. Seize the moment. Become a child of God tonight through your faith in him, through repenting of your sins, confessing the name of Jesus before your peers, and having your sins washed away in baptism. Or maybe you're here and you just need to respond to the gospel and start over by asking for forgiveness. Maybe you just need prayers. We give you that chance to do all those things because of what he did for you on that day. Whatever you need, please come. As together we stand and sing.
Father, we come to you tonight, and we do thank you for the sacrifice that you paid so that there are no scars in heaven except for those. And just thank you for that you gave us that chance to be with you, to be free from sin. And just right now, I want to thank you for the congregation and the family here, and for the response to this recent storms, and how this congregation showed your love through that. And just pray that right now you be with the leaders of the congregation, with the elders and the deacons, with John and Matt and Justin as they lead us, and with everybody else, the many others that do many of the works here. And just pray that you'll lead us and continue to help us get out in the community, and to show your word through our actions. And just pray that you be with us tonight as we go to our classes, and help us continue to learn about you. In your son's name, amen.
right, everybody, we're welcoming to class tonight. We started last week, we're looking at the Ten Commandments, and we looked at thou shalt not murder, or thou shalt not kill. We noted that God is the one that has given life, and God is the one who should take it away. We know that we do have to take life in our country, or I guess we do. We have that law, and we noticed that under God's authority that we can put people to death when they've done certain things that are bad. We know that in the beginning that the Bible tells us that he that taketh a man's life, his life shall be taken. So we know that that there are reasons to kill. Then the second thing under that was killing under authority, and this would be like killing in war, that people fighting. Then we look at killing as punishment, which we touched on a little bit last week. But we know that there are laws in our country and in most every state that have to do with capital punishment. And we know that there are a lot of people that are suffering that. And then again, maybe not that many. From 2015 to 2023, 1,567 people were put to death in America. In Texas, of that 1,567, Texas had 583 of those. We know that you don't mess with Texas. They have a capital law, and they will put you to death. They don't fool around about it. In Alabama, there were only 70. I found it kind of unusual that from 1608 to 2002, there were only 15,269 executions in America. You know, that doesn't seem like that many when you think about 1,567, a tenth of that happening between 2015 and 2023. Most of these have come about because somebody has murdered someone else. Generally, that's what the death penalty is reserved for. And we know that that particular law lets us know that human life is precious, that we cannot take the law into our own hands and put somebody to death without having possibly to suffer death ourselves. Some states have laws that say we're not going to have capital punishment, but if you kill someone, you might get life in prison. And most of the time, that doesn't actually happen. If you read today's paper, there were four men coming up for parole, and I think there were two of them that were serving life sentences, and they're wanting to get them out. You know, they're going to go out on parole. Well, you know, that's not what life in prison is. And of course, you may agree with that and may not. But we understand that there's a great deal of sorrow for someone who has to be put to death because they've killed someone else, because all life is very precious to us. Some people say that capital punishment is barbaric, that it's dehumanizing, and they say that generally because it's irreversible. There have been people who were serving, or they were on death row and were put to death, and then they found out that they really weren't guilty. That's unfortunate, but we have all kinds of checks and balances in our country for someone who is going to be put to death, and hopefully we wouldn't do that. We would find out sooner or later that this person is really innocent. And so we have that death sentence, and it's usually for murder, and that shows our high value of life. You know, you just can't kill somebody. Generally, you might say if you kill one person, you kill several. You know, there are people in their family who just fall apart, and I would understand that. But it's debated and probably will not be overturned. We'll probably have that all the time. Now, in England and Great Britain, they have hangings. They hang people rather than electrocute or anything else. And yet, it says that you would have to be a person over 50 years old to remember them ever hanging anybody. So it's just something that doesn't happen, or it hasn't happened. I guess they've done that to put away capital punishment. Well, we understand that next we look at something that's on the other end of the spectrum, and that's abortion. You know, Sure.
I know a situation personally in which a judge some years ago, in order to make a name for herself, convinced a young man to plead guilty to murder based on a case in North County. On the case in Georgia. The case in Georgia was overturned. He built his case, and he was still a recent legislature until she decided to run for federal judgeship. And a local couple sent an article to a lawyer in Georgia who contacted the lady to change their mind. And now the guy's in about broke, not that broke. Politics have a lot to do with it.
Oh, with
When
everything.
she realized that she was going to be federal judgeship, and it's going to be put out in the papers that she had advertised how that she was strong against murder and had, since this guy elected chair, on several occasions used to consider the case. When she was faced with the idea, we're going to show the articles in these papers that says you were campaigning on the fact that you, since you got the right, she decided to keep the trial. And now he's on life row. He'll get out of jail.
But he's not going to be put to death. Yeah.
So we have to be careful of how we decide whether the person is put to death or not. The whole thing to me is going down on political issues.
And you never know what all is. Because,
I know a person about that. So then I was involved in it several years ago.
mhm.
And so was Elmer Wilson's sister, Georgia. The guy today, get out of prison, stopped out the road. But his life was spared because the judge finally decided that she wanted to run for law, she wanted to be a federal judge. And she could not get a federal judgeship unless she had the ID trial. And pronouncing about life on the road. So we need to be very careful how we decide whether the person should be put to death or not.
well, that sometimes, is left to the jury. Sometimes the actual prison sentence or put to death is left to the jury. And
This is actually the judge, the local judge, in Macon County. And she literally, on 2 or 3 occasions, refused to consider the fact that the original sentence he had been changed because he's not guilty of anything wrong with the law. And she used that to compound the case for him, Macon County. He wasn't guilty, yes.
oh, yeah.
But she was using this for a political gain. And then when it came time to change it around, all of a sudden she changed her whole mind and get the person you're talking.
And she has the power to do that. Well, even if I believe if the jury even recommends death sentence, penalty or whatever, sometimes judges have the leeway of overturning it. You know, just saying, well, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do the other thing. Well, that's one thing, and you can see how these things can turn into something that we don't want them to turn into. We want people who are going to be put to death to be sure that they are guilty and without, as it says, within a reasonable doubt. I would find it very difficult to put anybody to death that wouldn't just absolutely say they did it. You know, I've never been involved in anything like that, and I hope I never am. But it's one of those things that you think about, this person is still a person. We don't like to take people's lives. But then you turn to something else where you talk about abortion and euthanasia. These are the two that people are killed without having any kind of trial or anything else. They simply are put to death. Christianity, which we talked about, has such a valuable concept of life that we reject abortion. Most Christians just won't have anything to do with that. We know that since Roe versus Wade in 1973, that the U.S. had 63 million abortions since 1973. 63 million. And I'm sure that particular figure is not just exactly correct, because they're happening all the time. Well over 4 million of these pregnancies had been terminated simply because the people didn't want the baby. And that's unfortunate, because we know people who have adopted children, and what a hard time it is to adopt a child, because they don't have any, or whatever the case may be. But we notice that in the U.S., 64% don't want or didn't want the Wade decision to be overturned. Now, we know it has been overturned, and therefore you've got a lot of kids. Just in 2020, there were 930,160 abortions, and 57% of those were from people from 20 to 29 years old. You're talking about young people who are wanting these abortions. And it is the responsibility of everybody to take care, and I don't mean that not take care, but they have to pay the consequences, I guess you would say, of premarital intercourse and all these things, which of course make babies. Some people use that as simply a way of contraception. Rather than taking precautions before, they said, well, I'll just kill the baby, and that's another way of having contraception. And we know that is just so abhorrent to God. And we never know what these children are going to be like. Some abortions, nearly 98%, are put on the books because they were taking the child's life to protect the mother or existing children. Now, I'm not exactly sure what existing children mean. Maybe it means that she's had so many children that one more would make the other suffer. But that when you have to say why we're doing this abortion, there has to be some reason. It's not, you can't put down there just whim or whatever. But 98% say that it's because of the mother's physical or mental health. And we know that's not true. That's just not true. 63 million women were not having problems during delivery that they had to kill the baby. That just doesn't make sense. But it does say that there's 1% of all abortions are from women who have been raped. Barely 1% of abortions are because there's a likelihood that the child will be handicapped in some way. And only 1% of abortions are because the mother's life are at risk. So what we see here that it's convenience, that women are having abortions to get rid of children that they do not want. Even if there is a chance of abnormality, we might come to the conclusion that this child, we don't know. You know, that's the doctors give you the best guess, and I guess with ultrasounds and all these kind of things that they can probably tell these things, but it has to be a judgment call, and it may be the judgment of the doctor, or it may be the judgment of the parents. I have known of at least one case where the child was severely handicapped. She could not see, she could barely talk, she was deaf. Her part of her spinal cord back here was missing, and she is, for all practical purposes, what we would call a vegetable. But I had her sister in my class, and her sister was friends with Colleen, and I've been over there to the house where they live, and this child responds. Now, don't ask me how, but she does respond, especially to her daddy. It may be the voice or whatever, but she responds to everybody that's in the household. And you would think that she couldn't do anything, but she has some degree of quality of life, and therefore, I don't know if they knew how much problem there was before she was born or not, but they just said, we're not aborting this child. And many people have that particular idea about that. There was a medical school where there was a meeting of medical students that attended a seminar on abortion. And the lecturer was giving everything that could come up. And he says, consider this. The father of this family has syphilis. The mother has tuberculosis. There are 4 children in this family already. The first one is blind. The second one died. The third one is a deaf mute. And the fourth has tuberculosis. The mother is now pregnant with that 5th child and is willing to have an abortion if the doctor suggests it. Well, he asked these students, what would you do? And of course, that seems like a pretty easy call. You know, this particular family has been riddled with problems. They may have been genetic. They may have been just because they lived in squalor. But it was decided overwhelmingly by the students that they would suggest abortion. Then the lecturer said, congratulations, you just killed Beethoven. So you never know. You never know what a child is going to be capable of. And, you know, I never knew that before, but the family situation was terrible. And yet, the next one was the healthy, good one. And I don't mean that in a derogatory method. The others couldn't help what they had either. But we know later in life that Beethoven did go deaf. Again, maybe have something to do, but he wrote some of his greatest works while he was deaf. Well, then we look at euthanasia, which is the other end of the spectrum. Literally, euthanasia means dying well. And we know that term has changed a meaning since its conception, I suppose, because it means that medically you're going to terminate somebody's life. Now, we've had a bunch of, I guess, well, not political, but medical things with Dr. Kevorkian, you know, the guy with the death machine, that he would help people that wanted to die to die. He gave them a concoction of drugs that simply put them to death, much like we would give, I guess, to the people that are being euthanized in the electric, well, not electric chair, but on the gurney. These people sometimes couldn't choose for themselves. They were in such a situation that they couldn't make the decision themselves, so somebody else had to. In theory, that sounds pretty harmless. You know, the terminally ill decide voluntarily that enough's enough, and at the time of their choosing, they're given such drugs that will cause them a speedy and painless death. I think we could sympathize with people like that. However, if you have someone that's that ill, can they make a proper decision about dying? They may want to get out of the situation that they're in, and according to pretty much everybody, they have the right to do that. But they won't say that they're killing the patient. They'll say things like it was their choice, it was their right, it was their freedom, and a lot of people go along with it. We have to understand that when you think about the elderly, that almost always those who need a lot of looking after is who we're talking about. And sometimes the people who are in charge, who would have to look after this person, might choose to put them to death in order to get out from under what they're going to have to do. Maybe some things about the will that might, there's all kinds of reasons for people wanting older people to die. But euthanasia sets a very worrisome precedent. Psychiatrists who who worked with the Nuremberg Tribunal. Now, this was the tribunal that came together after World War II, and there were just all kinds of people who were charged with war crimes during the war. Many of them worked in Hitler Germany's Auschwitz, Belsen, Treblinka, and it started out first as a subtle shift in emphasis in the basic attitude of physicians. That is, the physicians started with the attitude that we're going to start this euthanasia movement, and there are certain things that people have that they are not worthy to live. Now again, that's doctors making the decision, you need to die, you need to live, and these kind of things. The attitude in the early stages concerning itself merely with the severely and chronically ill. Gradually, though, the category was enlarged to encompass socially unproductive, the ideologically unwanted, the racially unwanted, and finally, everybody that wasn't a German. So it went from something that may have sounded good. Who decides when somebody's socially unproductive? If they're sick in the bed, that doesn't mean that they can't do anything, but that's what these Germans decided. So there was medical issues raising questions about life. Abortion and euthanasia allow us to become judges of who's valid to live, who's worth giving life to. The view that all human life is valuable is not popular today, and those who object to the plan, it is a belief in God that is the problem. Now let me finish that. There's a professor in Princeton College, University, whatever. His name's Peter Singer, and he made this particular thought about euthanasia and abortion. He said, once the religious mumbo-jumbo surrounding the term human has been stripped away, we will not regard as sacrosanct the life of every member of our species, no matter how limited its capacity for intelligent or even conscious life may be. So he's saying what's standing in the way of euthanasia and abortion is religion. Because God says everybody is worth something. And in order to kill a child that's unborn, you have to decide that this particular person is not is not worthy to live because of this, that, or the other, and you take its life away. The mentally handicapped, the brain injured, the unborn, and even newborns have no right to life. Indeed, killing them may, in such views, be morally accepted. So you wait till the baby is born, and then if it's